This is a man's world, but it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or girl.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Purpose and passion loading. It's my time. Happy Friday Eve, fam.
Happy Friday.
What it do?
Eve.
How you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling great, man. Got some great news today. I can't complain at all.
Love that.
Yes, sir.
Never can have enough good news. Ladies and gentlemen, happy Friday Eve. Welcome to the King's Cutting Board Podcast. A couple brothers decided to come together to talk about the things that were most important to us in the hopes that it could help somebody else. So very quickly, let's state what we are not.
Please.
We are not clickbait. We are not gossip. We are not entertainment. We are not for the normal going on conversation as it pertains to relationships between black men and black men, black women and black men. And so, like I said, we decided to come together to be about it while we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, for a couple of express reasons, ladies and gentlemen, to cause men and women to lean in more, you know what I mean? Listen to each other more, to love each other out loud, because it just makes the world a much doper place.
Facts.
To gain greater understanding, right? And what we said is, we used to say we wanted to create new norms. What we want to do is make sure that we are continuing overdue norms.
Facts.
Especially as it pertains to love and relationships for black men and black women. So that's what it is. I go by Victor Vaughn. The gentleman sitting to my left goes by
Bruce Bailey, choir boy, what they call him.
Young lady, the executive producer, the wind beneath our wings, the boss lady. The David Ruffin of it all.
Right.
Out here goes by
Coach Princess Di. Is it?
Really do that.
I mean, listen. Either
I
that.
could have invited myself, or I don't know, but you're gonna have to work on that. You can talk that through. We're all about professionalism.
Wow. We correcting,
Right.
we correcting on air?
Yep.
Powerful.
Open
That's
review.
crazy.
I'm messing.
Right, whatever.
Let's go right in line with our topic.
So sometimes the topics are funny.
Yep.
Just because sometimes they're interesting. Sometimes we end up heated and a little pissed off because of the bit all. But at the end of the day, everything we talk about is for the betterment of love and relationships between black men and black women. Tonight's topic is a good one.
I believe so.
Before I get to that, so I don't get in trouble, if you would please show us your love, because love is an action word. So like, follow, and share. You can find us on YouTube at The King's Cutting Board 2024, on Facebook, The King's Cutting Board Podcast, and coming soon to both IG and Virtual Verse. So again, love, like, follow, and share.
And you two do the same.
Yes, ma'am. So this evening, I did say this was going to be good. This evening, we're going to be chopping it up about the problem ain't the question. It's what you think the question means.
Is it the problem ain't, or is it?
Ain't.
It ain't.
It's not.
Think some attitudes,
The problem ain't the question.
saying
It's what you think it means.
ain't. It's on you, not me. It's such a loaded one, man. The more I dug into it, the more I liked it. The more interesting it got, right? And so just to get past the title in and of itself, we want to actually focus on what miscommunication does to a relationship, what overthinking does to a relationship. My God, what assumptions and then the subsequent and emotional reactions mean to this? And so it's like, have you ever asked your partner, and this is although we're the kings, this is from a male and female perspective, but have you ever asked your partner something simple and wondered out, how the hell did she or he get that from what I just said? Right? And what that can do and what that could be, what that would look like. And so this conversation tonight is just for anyone trying to listen deeper, right? Love better. And then because of that, just be exactly who the person that you love needs to be. So let's be about ladies first for real tonight. You surrounded by gentlemen, but yeah.
That's a little different, but I'll take advantage of this opportunity. But first, what we want to talk about, when we talk about the question, right? And when we say the question, that can mean so many things to so many different people. Like, it's almost like when we had the discussion about the topic.
Right.
How can the topic that we selected, right, connect with our viewers
Absolutely.
or our audience? And I was like, well, I like the topic.
Right.
Because when I read that question,
go ahead.
the title and the topic, they're one and the same. Because if I'm thinking about the problem ain't the question, is what you think it means.
Right.
Reading that very question would drive us to where we need to be in order to be open to this podcast. And the more we talk about ways of thinking about that statement,
right,
the more our audience will understand. So first, let me just say how we got here. So Bruce and I, we've already shared that we've been in therapy, right?
Absolutely.
And as a result of not only my background, but it's been in therapy, we often psychoanalyze situations.
Okay.
And we try to think about things in a more deeper perspective, so that we could understand how we should respond in each scenario and just not group everything as the same, right? And so as a result, we were talking about, I'm trying to see how to safely explain how we got here. I just know one day, because for this podcast, we're always looking up videos.
Always.
Trying to understand behaviors and what our experiences may look like. So, we can talk about diverse perspectives even on this platform, although it's geared towards men having a safe space, right? So in my research, I stumbled across a video that says, here are the signs of an overthinker.
Okay.
Right. And I just started thinking about that thing. And I was actually thinking about someone that I knew who matched those characteristics.
Okay.
And Bruce kept saying, well, this is not this person. This is more like you, babe. And I was like, no. Let me show you how this other person is more like this than like me. Right. But the more I kept thinking about it, I was like, I got it bad. Like, I have characteristics of an overthinker. And while I studied mental health, I didn't know it was a real thing.
Gotcha.
So can you just elaborate on just that small discovery at that moment? And what was going through your mind when I kept saying, no, this person is an overthinker. And you're like, I think it's you.
I mean, for me, it was, and we often talk about, some of the new things that we have identified that we never knew we lived with.
Yeah.
Right. And even to the point where, people say, were you controlling? And you're like, no, I'm not. Right. And then come to find out, we all have characteristics of being controlling.
Absolutely.
We do.
Right. And the same thing I think is applicable for this set of circumstances. But to Don's point, when we had the conversation and, we started to dig into it a little bit more, and I was just like, Di, all of that is exactly you.
Wow.
Like
I couldn't see it. I was like, no, I don't have it this bad.
And I was like, because she was alluding to this other person.
Right.
I was like, yes, she has characteristics of it, but yo, when you name a thing,
yeah,
like
it's like the Bible says, what you see of others,
okay.
Man.
So when he said it, did you grab hold of it, or you were like, nah, no, I'm not?
Well, again, we're in this mental health space, so I leaned my ear towards what he was saying. I said, let me dig into this a little bit more to understand what an overthinker is to see if I match those characteristics.
Okay.
And that's when I had that aha moment.
Okay.
So let me just say that my overthinking wasn't just anxiety, but it was deeply rooted in an emotional response.
Mhm.
And so what I also understand about our own behaviors is that they're not ever a bad thing. What has to happen in life is that we understand who we are and what we have to understand how, what we're built with in order to know how to respond in certain areas. So I had to understand what an overthinker was and what it was about me that triggered these type of responses.
Yeah.
When he either gave information or asked a question.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what the topic is, right? And you led off with that question.
Yeah.
Right? Because let's be real, the problem isn't the question.
Right.
Right? It's the tone. It's the timing. Right? Some may say it's the approach.
Yeah.
Right? It's the triggers.
Yeah.
Right? But let me tell you, most of all, what it is, it's really the truth sitting underneath the surface of what nobody's willing to name.
Repeat that again.
It's the truth
Mm-hmm.
sitting underneath the surface
Mm-hmm.
of what generally and normally, typically,
Right.
people are not willing to name. So just think about this, because I see you, right?
Mhm.
Somebody hit you with a truth
Right.
that you don't believe is true about you.
Mm-hmm.
That truth,
Right.
once you discover it,
Yeah.
right, you're gonna be like, wow, the aha moment.
Mm-hmm. And then
But-
you start recognizing what behaviors are
Yeah,
attached.
but even before the truth,
that.
right? Because even before the truth, you start saying, no, it was your tone, it was the way you said it,
Right.
right? It was your approach, right? It was the timing.
Yeah.
Your timing was terrible,
Yeah.
right? I was triggered,
Right.
but by what?
Exactly. Can we just back up a moment? Because then what Victor was talking about, there may be situations we have, and he's like, how many people actually said something to their partner or asked a question and it went left?
Mhm.
Do you have a real life example of when it happened between you and I heard one thing and you were asking one thing? I just want to talk it out a little bit so we can demonstrate what we're talking about.
There are many instances.
Just use one.
Okay.
I told him, by the way, you all, I'm the patient.
The homie said yes.
I'm the like client on
Yeah.
today's episode because it's usually them two, and they've grown a lot.
Oh, that's
and
crazy.
so I said I want to grow as they are.
That's
One
crazy.
of the homie has a plethora of examples.
Plethora.
You want to just rub it in?
A library,
Yeah,
catalog of
yeah.
this joint. So
Really?
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So there was a time,
Mm-hmm.
right, where I just be like, where are you? Right. She's
Right.
like, well, why? You got my location. I'm like, bruh. I asked one simple question.
Right.
Where you are. Why was that your response?
Right. That's a good one.
You felt like,
Yeah.
what made you go right to, you got my location? Okay.
Yeah.
So there were moments I heard, not where are you? I heard
Exactly.
why
Absolutely.
didn't you tell me where
Yes.
you were?
Absolutely.
So, but that's what you said verbatim.
Absolutely.
Why didn't you tell me where you were?
Yeah. That was my response.
Well, that triggered me because it's like, what do you mean why I didn't tell you where I was?
Yeah.
You can see my location.
Yeah. Because we have a rule. Let's talk about the rule first. So I want you to
A rule
continue
that
that.
Bruce created, right?
Yeah, I did. And the rule that my wife agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
So the rule is everybody knows where everybody goes.
Got it.
Everybody knows where everybody goes.
So how am I interpreting that? To me,
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like
so
that.
for me, everybody knowing is at any time Bruce can see my location.
Right.
He's following my phone.
Yeah.
Right. There are times where I understand the importance of saying it verbatim, like, hey, babe, I'm going to Tyson's Corner to go shopping, right? Because I'm telling him in what direction I'm going. However, if on the way to Tyson's Corner, I stop at the gas station, I didn't feel it was appropriate to have to tell Bruce while I'm on my way to Tyson's Corner, I'm stopping at the gas station.
Right.
And we're not that.
Right.
Well,
You
it
know,
makes
but-
me feel a level of him not trusting me to do the right thing, which makes me in turn feel like I'm not doing enough as a woman, so that to
Right.
increase his security.
Right.
Mhm.
And so for him on the reverse side, he's now feeling like I'm looking at him like, why are you being controlling?
Right.
That's really not what I'm saying.
Right, because a lot of times, like I know I'm gonna speak for me, right? A lot of times I'm just really checking in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not about lack of trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not about, well, you ain't tell me, we got this rule. Like, it's not really about that. I'm just really checking in.
Right.
In some, in most cases.
Yeah.
Right. And depending on, her mood, some of the wounds that she's dealing with, right? Some of, just having a bad week,
Mhm.
she gonna hear things totally different
Than
right?
how he's saying it.
Yeah, and I always say this, and this is why it's a great conversation, because I always say when you know a person's heart,
Yeah.
you never have to question their intent,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
The I think part of the problem becomes, what do we define as intent?
Right. So let me do this first. I want to define what an overthinker is, because I want to go into a little bit more detail and provide a little bit more context. But what I would say is my new discovery helped me realize that I wasn't just being dramatic in those moments,
Right.
but I was protecting the parts of me that never felt safe.
Yeah.
And once I start defining what an overthinker is, you will understand why I'm responding based on an emotional response, but it's triggered in a place in which I'm trying to make myself feel safe.
So now you don't hear concern, you hear criticism.
Correct.
You follow what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's why I'm always saying it's so important for couples to conversate and really converse about the small things. The Bible says it's the small foxes.
Yep.
It's the small stuff that builds up over time.
Absolutely.
Right? Building this now resentment against your partner, and you fighting against your partner when your partner is really not the problem.
Same
Right.
team.
You follow what I'm saying? So, for me,
the problem.
The problem is the problem, not the person.
Yeah.
Right. So now how can we get to a point where we are aligned with how we define intent?
So let me go back to defining the overthinker. Okay. So overthinking is the process of repeated worry, repeated analysis, and mental rehearsal.
Yeah, that part.
It's a coping mechanism for fear, unpredictability, or past emotional harm. And if I was to break it down psychologically, it is rooted in trauma, fear of abandonment, or perfectionism.
Yep.
It often is driven by a need to feel control in relationships. Feel control in relationships. And so, can I just go back to his example real quick of when he asked me where I was? I'm hearing that as if he don't trust where I am.
Right.
And so, for me, I want to like because of this trauma, I'm aggressively responding to get this type of security.
It's defense.
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism, because I'm like, I need you to trust me, and I shouldn't have to tell you where I am in order for you to trust me. But he wasn't questioning that because he didn't trust me.
Right.
It was just information.
Checking in. Hey,
checking in.
I just want to make sure you're good.
Yeah. But what were you going to say?
No, that's cool. Keep on.
Well, no, you could go back. Oh, you good.
I think I didn't want us to just gloss over, because you said something that was major, and I'm positive the overwhelming majority of people don't see it this way. But these moments, right? You were talking about your response was a result of trauma.
Correct.
In some regard. What I believe we miss, though, is in that moment, another traumatic moment occurred.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna get to that. Yep.
Okay.
And it happens over and over.
We don't
self-sabotaging.
We never look at it that way.
Yep.
But it shapes us. So keep going.
It certainly does.
But here's the thing. So it's not that I don't quote unquote trust others, right? Is that I've been trained not to trust we're safe unless I'm trained not to trust what's safe unless I'm extremely sure.
Okay.
Like I need proof of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is how it shows up in my relationship, right? Rereading text over and over just to analyze what he's trying to say and not what he's saying verbatim.
Right.
It's like I overanalyze stuff. I read into it. Why didn't you use this word? Because you didn't use this word, you mean this.
Oh, man.
And all of those thoughts are negative, and they're like triggering my hurt all over again. Old hurts that he had nothing to do with. Right?
And what's crazy is, I want you to keep going, but what's crazy is, like, even yesterday, or was that today? It was today or yesterday. I was like, so now, you've heard that I say this often. I'm literal.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you just overthinking the whole situation,
and
but we
claiming
calling it literal,
right?
Absolutely.
But those are those empty. Remember, I said on my live, well, not on the live, but on my purposeful pauses, when I said that sometimes, right, we feel like we're defending ourselves emotionally, but really we're going emotionally bankrupt.
Absolutely.
Like it's causing us to waste too many good emotions on a hurt that is not even new.
Definitely.
Right. And we're gonna get into that in a minute. But also some of the things that I do is I assume. I make a lot of assumptions based on his body language. I feel like I'm analyzing how he is.
Right.
And if I get a jump start on analyzing what this is, because something bad about to happen. But if I interpret what I think in my perceived mind is about to happen, if I save myself from that, if I understand what's going to happen, then I can build these fake defense mechanisms before it even happened.
Facts.
Like I'm thinking about something that didn't even happen.
Yeah, facts.
And it doesn't even mean that that thing won't happen, but why it doesn't have to always be grouped in the past hurt.
Right.
And for a minute, Bruce kept asking me for a minute, he said, why do you keep bringing up that other stuff with this new situation? It did not click in my brain that he really wasn't talking about
this is
the situation
crazy.
not being similar.
Right.
But how does it attribute to this one thing you claim is not resolved? That thing was in this relationship when you showed up. It was a hurt that existed prior to the relationship.
Yeah.
So, and we bring this stuff in new relationships because it's a trauma response. It reminds us of old past hurts. You know what I mean? It's being triggered. And now we trying to use them same defense coping mechanisms in order to feel better. That's
because it's familiar. You comfortable with going to those spaces.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You think you are, but then you wake up and that same hurt is still right there.
No
but
question.
Go ahead.
What do you say all the time? The power to define is the power to fulfill.
Absolutely.
And to be able to define something, you have to see it, understand it, grasp it, and all the moving pieces and parts of it. And we're probably going to get to this, but the reason why this thing happens so perpetually is because, again, we completely don't see it and understand it for what it is. Trauma is a literal injury that occurs, right? A damage to whether it's physically, right, or emotionally. But it's not just an injury; it's an injury that supersedes. Like it is, you know what I mean? If you're notified that someone is in a trauma center, you have a level of concern and understanding, right? That what the person is going to get, the care that they're going to get, is
I see
match
you, Doc.
what they've dealt with.
Yeah. But even the word trauma, to me, even as I hear you talk, it's subjective though. The level of trauma that a person faced, right, is based on.
So here's the thing, right? And this is what I was going to get to later. I had this realization after we went to the men's service a couple weeks ago, and we were sitting in there, and I told Bruce, I was like, yo, I'm gonna start going back to therapy again. And it was something to do, said, and it just clicked for me again. Like, why not use it as a tool to better myself, like I done before, not have to wait for something that's quote unquote wrong to do it. And so I had to move away, like not get caught up in that stigma in order to get to that place. I said that to say this: as long as we stay not understanding what we're dealing with, then we never give it the attention and the care for it to heal. And so it keeps mounting up, more and more. And so all I'm saying is, if we don't do anything else but get people to understand the importance of leaning in and loving each other more, is because otherwise, so often we do this damage, right? That erodes at everything it is that you say that you want in a relationship to begin with.
Can I say this one thing to further clarify the vein that you're in and what you're actually saying? Just this one thing, because I keep hearing anything that we focus on will expand, right? And when you talk about and define trauma, and the fact that I'm thinking is subjective, because I often think about how Christ died.
Right.
That was trauma. People don't understand the magnitude of the trauma that he felt when he died for the sins of the world, so much that he was breathing his own blood, and so much of his body was crushed. And even when it was crushed, he had to somewhat maneuver on a cross and was hung. And people may not believe that story, but when we talk about trauma, like that's really subjective. And the Bible even says that the sufferings are not worthy to be compared to the glory. So I'll go back to saying this, because when we think about me being an overthinker, right, and it being the root of it being caused by past trauma, we hear the word trauma as something negative, and it's not. We give it too much negative weight. So even me understanding I'm an overthinker, the way to overcome it is to understand how it works and understand how I can shape that behavior in that space.
In the root
and
of
so
it.
In the root of it, where is trauma? Well,
deeper than that. The root of overthinking is absolutely positively the spirit of fear.
Oh, well, that's anxiety. Yeah, but fear is linked to trauma.
No.
And so, and that's what I'm actually about to say, because when I started realizing I was this overthinker, I have open, transparent conversation with Bruce.
Right.
I went back to Bruce and said, you know what, babe? I did further research and study, and I am an overthinker.
Right.
And here's how. And he started saying, man, that was good. And even in our study, guess what Babe did? He went back and studied himself. And I noticed his responses and how he managed my questions, right? Bridge the gap so that I can receive the necessary healing. But it was in my moment of being vulnerable and sharing this with my spouse and trusting that he had my best interest at heart. That was hard for me to say that. And so as Bruce began to adjust and understand how to manage, first, let me ask this question. Where was your mindset when I finally admitted that I was an overthinker? Like, how did you feel? And what type of things were you doing to improve in that space?
I was like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
Keep me on track, because because Jay said something, but I want y'all to keep me on track.
Okay.
Because this Jay Huff, he said texting is the worst form of couples communication.
Yes, I agree.
I'm not gonna say I agree.
I understand why though.
Because I understand why, and you correct me if I'm wrong, while texting has not always worked for us, texting has absolutely been super beneficial for us.
It has, but when we text now, we think about what we're texting before we text it, and we also have AI to assist us.
Right. So, that's the
Chat
reason.
GPT. Couples need to use Chat GPT.
And that's the reason I'm saying that, because I understand, because prior to, you were saying things on a text, and while you knew what you were saying, you knew your intent.
Right.
The other person didn't.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's
while
what
you were trying to convey tone, compassion, the words didn't come across like that.
I agree.
Right. But I'm gonna tell you, Jay, texting for us, now that we have this new and different strategy, has been super beneficial for us.
It has.
Right.
And we laugh all the
absolutely.
time. And
absolutely.
we actually be knowing that we're using Chat GPT.
Yeah.
How it's
facts.
How it look.
Yeah.
And we'll laugh at each other. But the way Chat GPT is able to articulate, and really get the hone into the essence of what we're saying to one another. It helps. And so much so that there are times where I don't have to use Chat GPT to respond appropriately. Because the more you use it, you have an innate ability to not only respond, but to understand why you shouldn't respond in certain ways. So I find it quite helpful.
So back to the question at hand. One thing that I've learned about my wife,
and what's this question?
And I always joke about you.
The question in case somebody just hopped on.
The question was, how did I feel when you had the aha moment about you
owned it, came clean?
Yeah, with respect to
overthinking,
being an overthinker, right? Me knowing my wife, I've had to learn how to become probably more patient than ever. Right.
Oh.
Because it could take a minute. Right. It could take a minute for that dial up. Yeah, exactly. It could take a minute. So with me understanding that, I now know I don't always necessarily have to respond in the moment based on her response, or react in the moment based on her response. Right. I've learned and recognized that sometimes me just backing up and allowing really her to have her own reflections, it often works out in my favor, and I become the benefactor of that part. You follow what I'm saying? So in this moment, I'm thinking like, this is so good. Like, because I swear I be wanting to say everything that she actually comes back and says to me and says to herself. Right. So I love it in that sense.
Because I was about to say, I don't know if me being an overthinker, if that's always good, because there's still a trauma response.
There's still a trauma response.
Because I'm trying to analyze what you're telling me before you even tell me.
And here's the thing about trauma. Trauma is not just what happens to you. It's what happens in you as a result.
No, that's a fact, right? You have like literal scar tissue.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That blocks.
And even I'm sorry, bro. My bad. I didn't mean to jump in.
You're good.
But even to because you started talking about people being in the trauma center, right?
Yeah.
There are more people, I would venture to say, who probably end up in ICU for stuff they didn't recognize because it was on the inside and they couldn't see it.
That was good.
Keep going.
That was good. That was good.
Absolutely.
And the doctor, like, if you had dealt with this a long time ago, we wouldn't have got here.
Facts.
And so that's why we keep
you on to something.
So dig it. I mean, literally, if you look at it took you till you were 34 years old to figure out that you were overthinking.
Powerful.
Thank you. But what's crazy is, even through therapy, right? Some of the things that she used to ask me, like a few weeks ago when she would ask me questions, it was like, no, I'm over this, I'm over that. But the more we talk out my current problems, it's taking me all the way back to childhood.
So let me
go ahead, Doc.
Let me jump in, right? Because what you're literally talking about is trauma responses.
Absolutely.
Facts, right? Which again, we don't categorize.
And now I'm at ICU.
We don't categorize these things.
Come on.
But there are four of them. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. These are all trauma responses. They're not always triggered by physical threats.
That's a fact.
This is the good part. Excuse me. But can also be activated by emotional or psychological stressors.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And that's
typically,
again, we only think about trauma, something traumatic, like, you know what I mean? Somebody ran up to me and put a gun to my head. You know what I mean? Or I saw something horrible, right? That I can't move past, I can't get past. Only here's the deal. The fact that he said or didn't say or did what he didn't do, right? And left you feeling unloved, unheard, untaken care of, unprotected, or unsafe in that moment is as damaging as seeing something horrible.
That's what we're going with.
But we never look at it that way, which makes it a million times worse.
Facts.
But again, I think that a lot of this, when we talk about being in a relationship and just not individual trauma, right? And I'm just thinking about how sometimes our individual traumas, it impact one another. And in my situation, the reason why, that's why I'm talking slowly.
Okay.
I know he's the man of God for me is because in my vulnerability, I honestly don't feel unsafe with him. But because I was an overthinker, is always that I feel like I don't want to be vulnerable because I'm afraid of myself. And what me exposing myself, if I feel like, because I'm so hard on myself. And if I feel like I've done this own damage to myself,
Yeah.
why would I want to open myself up for him to see this damage and it do
Plus.
more damage to him?
Plus, and I'm
That's
gonna
so
dive
good.
back into these responses,
so
and
good.
that it's why it's so good. Because here's the thing we talked about it all being rooted in fear. Well, fear perverts the truth.
It does.
Fear takes.
Yep. That's why I take that
what's-
question.
You know what I mean? What's
and
real
distort it.
and absolutely makes you question its validity.
Yep.
Even though you know that it is.
And I think, and it's tossed right back to you, but I think also, which is it's important that we understand when you talk about this vulnerability, that it requires transparency,
Facts.
That
which
thing
is
be
different,
hard,
which is
y'all.
different than being honest.
Very different from being
Right. When somebody's being honest, they're responding to a question that you ask.
Yep.
Mhm.
Being transparent,
It's the
I'm
more
telling you
information
stuff
ain't
without
gotta ask.
I ain't gotta ask.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's hard.
So yeah, that's difficult.
That's hard. But I just want to. Are you finished?
No.
No, he had these started.
All right, go ahead. Because I was just going to get back to the example I was saying about when Bruce, and then I was going to throw it to you anyway. But what I'm saying is I wanted to talk about how when Bruce interpreted where I was and me being transparent, how supportive he was of that process. Because one thing he recognized is it was a turning point because he realized in my questioning, I'm not even doubting him.
Right.
But I was trying to feel safe with him.
No, I can dig it. And what you're saying is going to be pertinent to the back end of what we talk about when we move towards resolution, right? Which we will.
Okay,
So
we'll go ahead.
All right. So these 4 responses again: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Mhm.
Fight, we're familiar with, right? That's the response that involves confronting the threat directly, either physically or verbally, which again, we
Yes.
don't look at it that way.
You just attacking people.
Yep.
And it's characterized by assertiveness and a readiness to combat
Always.
the perceived
Yep.
danger.
The overthinker is always combative.
Which is, I mean, you got my location.
Yep.
What the
Just answering this question.
Right.
I'm at blah blah blah. I'm so afraid of that fear that I'm feeling about what my response, you know what I mean, may lead to. Because I'm thinking he's asking me this for this reason. And if I tell him this, then it's going to turn out like this. And I don't even know that.
Can I tell you something though? There's certain precursors, there's certain indications that something is wrong in our body.
That's because we were hurt before.
Or we're just dealing with certain things. What like the thing
we're
that
not dealing with certain things.
Right. Or the thing that we're dealing with, we don't understand again where the root of it is.
Yep.
So I'll tell you, like, pause for the cause, men's health, right? And men's mental. Gentlemen,
that's good.
If your equipment is not working,
and there's a lot of those out there.
It is.
Wow.
I'm just saying, put it out there because men think they're alone in it. It's so many men that
no, you're right.
They're not vulnerable enough to talk about it.
I know
so
from being in health and wellness, that erectile dysfunction drugs, every retail day of every year within this country,
no doubt,
sold within the top 3 prescriptions that are sold daily.
Facts. So, I'm gonna give me some tomorrow.
Wow. Literally.
Talk about
literally. Right now, if
long time,
yeah, killing me. Love it. Nah, but if that's a reality, gentlemen, what you need to understand, it's a lot bigger issue than that. It's typically a direct function of something that's not going on with you right in your heart, cardiovascular system. That thing, that response from a woman to a man, even though it seems so small, is that major to me. It's a precursor of like she's in a place or a space or has a feeling.
Yeah.
Right. That's that serious. So
I guess you're done.
That was
no,
well done.
Yeah,
5.
Okay. I know.
I was a pause for a podcast.
First of all, yeah.
People said they like.
I don't like y'all being in union right now.
People like
he picked up his water in there.
Yeah, be like, dang.
I thought you were comment.
You could have let me talk.
I was before you missed the layup.
I did. My bad.
All right, so that was flight.
Yeah.
This response involves escaping the threat or avoiding it by seeking physical or emotional distance.
Wow.
It's often described as running away from the situation. We know that one is common.
Yep.
I mean, especially now, if I'm real about it, especially for us men, right? Even if, and right or wrong is we're not even gonna go there. But in this situation, right, she responded with the, I mean, you got my location, right? And so many men, it's either gonna go one or two ways,
because you
right?
see how my neck got
it's gonna go all the way left.
You see this neck right here? We gotta stop doing that, ladies.
It's gonna go all the way left,
Yeah.
or he's gonna be off some whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's that dismissal.
Absolutely, positively. Freeze. This response involves a state of immobility or paralysis, where the body becomes unresponsive to the threat. It can also involve disassociating from the situation.
We talked about that because I often disconnect emotionally, and that's how I was built up. Because he was like, I can't believe you flip-flop like that. Like, yeah, my emotions, like I could cut them off quickly.
There are a lot of couples right now sharing a house but not sharing a home.
I was just saying from a general perspective. I try not to cut off my emotions from him.
Well, no. I'm just saying in terms of this being a response. That's
good. I
where
can
people
see that.
Dissociate, where they together, but they aren't together.
Because they are still hitting a wound that has never healed with new situations over and over. And I have an analogy, but I want you to go ahead.
Last one. Watch it. Watch
too much.
Disrespectful. Fawn, this response involves appeasing the threat or person perceived as threatening to avoid conflict or gain.
How long did I do that?
Approval. It can involve prioritizing others' needs over one's own.
Yep. And I can see that.
I'm going to tell you what's interesting about that. And my wife does not know I'm about to say this, but I think she will look great. I'm praying she will look great. God knows her praise.
Out there now.
Right. There were times where she, I would go to my wife and she would be like, well, what about me?
Right.
And I'm saying, I'm not dismissing you.
Right.
I'm just saying, here's an opportunity where I'm coming to you and saying, hey, hello, I want to deal with something that I'm dealing with.
Right.
And now we've thrown it back on you. I think too often in relationships, we perceive when our partner is coming to us with an issue, concern, that we're now saying
I did something.
You did something, or you don't have the opportunity or never had the opportunity to voice your concern. Right.
Yeah.
And and again, I think this is all so relatable, right? Because when you're an overthinker, it's like you always want to make it about you. I don't think about the person that you talked about now, right? You always want to make it about you.
Well, not necessarily about you, but you do internalize it and you make it personal. You take everything personal and you internalize it, not necessarily make it about you, because you're really forgetting about you.
Well, I'm thinking about the times when we had conversations.
Well, you seek attention because you feel unseen.
Well, I'm talking about this person in particular. Like, well, what about me?
Yeah, all the time. Like,
I'm not dismissing you.
You had nothing to do with what this. Like, it's not we dismissed you, but you were part of the equation in the first place. But that's a part of the overthink. I'm gonna get into that a little later, but he not. That's why I gotta redirect you.
Okay. I mean, after you redirect. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I got it.
He got this over here.
Oh, this I know. So real quick, just to reiterate, right? So how people's responses are always about now, right? So often about then. Many times the responses we get today are based on how questions were asked or conversations in general left us feeling in the past. And then what happens is, right, because we talked about that scar tissue, emotional baggage becomes emotional barriers.
Absolutely.
That's powerful. Ideally, we grow healthy in relationships that view and embrace inevitable challenges, differences, and confrontations as opportunities, right, to lean in, right, to learn, to grow. However, if and when we ignore those things, we like, let's let them go to the side, they result in baggage that becomes barriers. ultimately, because we talked about, we're protecting ourselves, right?
Mhm.
But that same barrier that keeps bad people out also keeps good people out.
So I also don't want to overshadow what an overthinker is as well and make it seem like it's a bad thing. Like I said before, because even when I hear you talk, it's like, dang, it caused me to do this, dang, it caused me to do that. And the fact that I'm even overthinking in the responses
Right.
is like causing me to feel like this overthinker thing is a bad thing. And that's why I said it was so pivotal for Bruce to lean in at that time, because he had to find out ways he can help me overcome this. So it meant he had to explain a little bit more to me. Right. He had to lean in a little bit more.
Yep.
Because he was willing to give me the level of security that I needed to heal through this process. And the blessed part about it is I'm not having to heal by myself, because he's supporting me in those areas. So now he's causing me to feel a little bit more safe, right? And then he break down what I need to understand. And then so with me, I recognized through him helping me through this healing process, it caused me to dig a little bit more. So now I'm safe at this level. So now I'm starting to recognize how it's just my inner child crying out. And it has nothing to do with what any other person did, in life, because this is all triggered by that same hurt that's in that space of not feeling regarded, of being unseen, of not having the surety that I yearn for, to prove who I am. And that's why I'm a perfectionist, or I'm an overachiever, and I overthink, because I feel like if I just mess up one more time, you know what I mean? If I just mess up one more time, I'm just a horrible person. This is the same pain I felt when my son died, who I tried to protect from gun violence. You know what I'm saying? Being a single mom and your son be murdered, from the very thing you tried to protect him from, you can't help but feel like a failure in that moment, because it's almost like everything I was prideful for in his life went in the grave with him. Or how about times where we're in a marriage, when I felt like I first gave my life to Christ, right? And it was in the process of me giving my life to Christ that I felt like everything went wrong. I even got a divorce, when I was saved, and I'm like, God, I was the perfect wife. So I thought, why would you cause this separation to occur? Now I'm abandoned again. So that means that with this overthinking process, for me to not feel like unsafe or unsure about myself, I always wanted to think about it. I'm like, Diana, you smart. Now, remember the last time when you avoided that, this is what you did. And I'm carrying those same behaviors into each new situation, right? And pressing myself to have security I need, whether it's an understanding, whether it's a good job, you know what I mean? Whether it's a good husband or a good ministry, all these behaviors play a part of that.
No, it's and that's just scratching the surface. And everything
Absolutely.
that you said,
that's just the surface.
Plays itself over and over a million times a day, and are triggered.
And you
by
know how
certain
hard
things.
on myself I am when I miss a mark.
Yeah. So it's you know what I mean, to salute you, right? That's why intention, which we talked about earlier, is so important, because there's no, if we're honest about it, there's no playbook for a lot of this. There's not even understanding of it for real, pat ourselves on the back. So that if there's not real understanding, how is there going to be a playbook? But it has to be about the intention to lean into love, right? Even when, yo, what the hell did she get? And giving her the space to get it on her own, because once you got it, and y'all are better for it. But that's when you talk about, forgive me, what did you say, that when intention is known?
When I know a person's heart, I don't have to question their intent.
But it's that thing, it's that blanket benefit of the doubt that regardless of how it may feel, I know this person loves me, has my best interest at heart.
And were you gonna say something?
No, I want you to.
Well, and I think because you talked about how do we understand it. I think it first comes from just being honest enough to be aware.
Yes.
Because most people, and I know I've struggled with it. You know what I mean? Where I just, when you hear the truth about yourself, a lot of times coming from somebody else, it hurts more than coming from you.
Yeah.
But it's still the truth.
Right.
So if I have people that I consider have my back.
Yeah.
Yes. Being an advocate.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Then why Why is it so hard? I heard somebody say this today. He was asking two young ladies. He said, let me ask y'all a question. He said, if a guy told you, if you just met a guy, right? You just meeting this guy.
Right.
He was everything that you want, right? 6 figures, 6 feet tall, courteous, kind,
Right.
all that. Would you date him?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right. He said, let me ask you this. If that same guy said, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna marry you.
Right.
Right. I'm gonna set you up with your own business. I'm gonna make sure your life is abundantly different.
Right.
I'm gonna give you everything you can ever dream of.
Right.
Right. Here's all I'm asking for you. Right. You stop hanging out with some of your friends because they're not good for you.
Right.
Right. You work out. You go to the gym. Right. Get your body right. Get your mind right.
Right.
He said, and it was some other stuff, but he was saying, would you still date him? They was like, no.
Wow.
And he said, here's the piece that triggered me, right? He said, now let me ask you this. Why is it that when people get out relationships,
mm-hmm.
the very thing that somebody else is asking you to do, those are the very things you do when you get out relationships?
Yeah,
that's true.
You go to the gym, you get yourself better.
Right.
Yeah.
You say, I'm gonna separate from these people because I got to get myself better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am coming in
Mm-hmm.
because I'm trying to help you.
Right.
So we both can be better.
Yeah.
But you don't see that because you don't want somebody else to deal with your issues.
Correct.
Wow.
Or help you deal with your issues.
Correct.
Cook, Doc.
Up until you identify that those are the issues that I have.
Ooh, that's good.
And that's what I'm saying. Self-awareness is so critical.
It is.
And when we have these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, to your point, and that's why I appreciate, Di, because it could be different.
Yeah.
It could.
Right? It could be times when she be like, nah, that ain't me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we could be living 20 years and you still be talking about that ain't you.
Real.
But it's like we never effectively deal with the hurt. And let me just be
Don't.
clear. The hurt is not necessarily always an instantaneous process. Like me having my discovery at this moment, because I recognize it and understand the characteristics, I have to understand how it shows up in my relationship or how it shows up in my life.
Let me tell you. So I'm gonna tell you what made me. I'm gonna work this thing backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you what made me to say the other week that I was gonna go back to therapy again. I realized I was thinking through a question that I'm gonna pose to the audience later on. It was Sarah Jakes, and she said it was great. It was like a relationship building, like a great question to ask when you're seeking to really get to know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And the question was, what's the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
And how does it show up in your life today?
That's a good
I
question.
was like, Jesus.
That's
and when I thought about it for me, I had to hone in on the how does it show up in my life today part, because typically in that equation, you would think that it's something that show up in a real traumatic fashion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an alcoholic, you know what I mean? I'm abusive. I'm a recluse. I can't maintain relationships. But what I realized was just because I don't feel traumatized,
mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that who I am and how I show up in life hasn't been shaped and molded by trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So again,
that's good.
It goes back to, it's not the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens is it's really about what you're carrying when the question shows up.
Ooh, yes.
Right?
It could change.
It's the unhealed places that get poked.
Yes.
When the question is asked.
And you so used to the pain that you think is normal.
Absolutely.
You normalize the trauma and make it a regular process of your life.
And then you revert back
Jesus
to the way that you used to deal with it.
So that's what I wanted to
as if that worked.
Yeah.
I wanted to give you credit for, right? Because it wasn't, to me, just now in the moment when you were saying what you were saying, it's not just what you were saying, it was about how passionate you were saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we really want to give men, especially Black men, like permission to feel, embrace, yes, right, and to not react with shame, because here's what we know: emotional intelligence in general, and specifically men realizing what they need, right, then much less articulating it to the woman that they love is new to many, right, and uncommon far too often. It's essential we're conscious, excuse me, and cognizant of our reactions. It allows us first to be aware of them, then address them, then be accountable for them, then ultimately change them for the betterment of ourselves and the women we
And
love.
the crazy
Lord.
thing is, what I've discovered is that generally speaking, more men deal with what we're talking about right now than females.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, fact.
Right?
A lot of
Because we've been built to protect.
Mhm.
Yep.
So the last thing you're gonna do is come in here and poke me.
Fact.
Right.
You know what I mean? So but part of my concern is that I think now the roles are being reversed
Mhm.
in some
They are.
instances,
They are.
right? And you have now females becoming more protective
Facts.
because they may not have protectors,
Mm.
right?
That's good.
Which now just is instinctively built into them to say that, well, if I can't trust you to protect me,
Yeah.
I gotta protect myself.
And a relationship. Facts.
And the sad part about it is they not even built for that necessarily.
I agree.
Not that they can't function in it.
Yeah.
Because they function well in it. The problem is that wasn't necessarily their makeup.
Correct.
Right? That
And
wasn't their responsibility.
It's not that we can't do it.
That's what I
but
said.
honestly, the burden that we would carry trying to be a man, that burden is severe. And having to live up to that expectation.
The trauma, right, that we don't talk about and don't deal with, and also often don't know exists, also shapes what we look for and considering is going to make us safe. And a lot of times, because it's shaped by the trauma, that what we think or right or feel is going to make us safe is the very thing that's not.
And
because like I always say, you become emotionally bankrupt at that moment when you're
Yes.
trying to fulfill your own hurts.
yes,
You know what I mean? Your hurt driving you to
Yes.
heal the hurt.
yes.
Yeah.
How's that even possible?
And that's why I'm always conscious about when I say that men, we got it bad. Like we got a lot on us.
Yeah.
It's not to excuse that females don't have a lot.
At all.
Like I'm every woman. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times, in a lot of cases, they want us to be Superman, but they won't allow us to be Clark Kent.
Don't know what to do with Clark Kent. And you said this the other day. You
Why you looking at me like that?
either really?
I ain't gonna be petty today. Go ahead.
You were early. I mean, you could go.
Oh, I mean, this
you might as well
evening.
go ahead and get your money's worth.
Nope, I'm not gonna be petty this evening.
That he spent much more time as Clark Kent.
He spent much more time as Clark Kent.
What is the rationale behind this?
So Superman, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can leap tall buildings with a single bound,
Yeah, yep.
right?
I love it.
He fighting against everybody.
Yes, that's what I want.
Guess what?
What?
Clark Kent didn't have that same responsibility.
He didn't.
Whereby
So
now,
why should we want Clark Kent?
here's why.
Okay.
Because Clark Kent was the softer portion,
Mm-hmm.
the more meek, the more vulnerable portion of what Superman couldn't be because what he was dealing with.
Oh, like kryptonite. So you mean
Yes.
like he couldn't spend time? And see, this me being an overthinker, I had to understand.
It's all right. That's what we're here for.
Patience to explain it. He used to be thinking I'm trying to work against the thought, and I'm not.
Right.
So this is just a sign of an overthinker, right? And look
mm,
at how he would respond. So okay, so I think I'm starting to understand. So what you're essentially saying is Clark Kent, right, could do more things than Superman can because the things Superman did couldn't attribute.
I'm
to
not
the
even saying
relationship.
that. And really, Victor just hit it.
Mm.
Because I have to live as Clark Kent more often than
Mhm.
Superman,
Mhm.
there should be enough space for me to function as Clark Kent.
But what's wrong with getting somebody that's Superman 24/7?
It's not possible.
Why?
I'm
It's
literally-
unhealthy.
so
But what if the person could be? What's wrong with even wanting that? I'm just trying to understand.
Go ahead.
I understand what you're saying in and of itself, right?
What job does
But it-
Superman have?
I think you're like Superman.
Like Superman.
You able
Like-
to leap tall buildings.
Listen to what you're saying though. I'm like
One single
Superman, but
bound.
most times because I gotta function in this world we live in,
Mhm.
I have to function as Clark Kent.
You be functioning as Superman all the time.
Okay.
I just said you able to leap tall
Okay,
buildings
go ahead,
with
bro.
one single bound.
Okay. I don't know what's
Oh.
happening.
No,
If
but
you want me to
all
blush,
jokes
just say
aside,
so,
no,
bro.
so
Like, what is
I
happening?
guess because I live in a daily expectation that here is what we can get, right? And the only reason why I understand your analogy, and I understand that some men are not Superman all the time. That's your point. Like, if you have a person that is Superman sometimes, but he can't be Superman all the time, don't kick him while he
So we
down.
I don't-
actually we look
Why he
at
don't
it,
have those
we look at
superpowers.
it we look at it the wrong way.
Okay.
Right?
I think you
For
going
real.
going.
For real, you were like Superman can't be Superman all the time. It's really Clark Kent didn't want to be Superman all the time.
Right.
Clark Kent
Exactly.
was who he was.
That's good, Victor.
Yeah,
Superman was
that's exactly
what he
where I
had
was
to
going.
do.
It was
Yeah.
going. That's
And it was
exactly where I
okay.
was going.
Had to, like, it was his duty
Right.
Yeah,
to the whole freaking universe.
Right.
To
Right.
that
That was
end.
pressure.
And here's what's powerful.
pressure.
I watched the Superman movies a million
Here y'all
times.
go.
All
He was
boys
going
do.
where I was going.
All boys do. But I was watching, and this was a time I'd gone to my doctor. This was probably more than 10 years ago. I was having like chest pains for days in a row. So I was like, let me not mess around with this thing. Went to the doctor. I was really glad because he was a traditional doctor, but a naturopath. And so what he said is, I'm gonna put you through these battery of tests, right? And clear. I just want to make sure all your vitals, everything was good. At the end of the day, he sat down and said, Mr. Vaughn, you're dealing with stress. He was like, your heart is fine, your kidneys, your
Oh.
lungs, everything.
This is crazy.
I was like, I'm not stressed. He was like, you're absolutely dealing with chronic stress. I was like, I'm not stressed. And he shoved the clipboard into my chest.
Wow.
And what he said to me dovetails into what I said earlier. What he said to me is, just because you don't feel like you're stressed doesn't mean that your body isn't and hasn't been dealing with the impact of the stress for years. He said, as a matter of fact, you're highly sought out and compensated because you thrive under stress. He said, but let me be clear. And this is exactly what he said to me. He said, you'll be the idiot that dies with a smile on his face from a heart attack because you don't know when to stop.
Bro, that's I'm not even gonna get into what I just went.
I got a question, and I'm not trying to be funny when I ask this,
Right.
but I'm thinking about when you said Clark Kent prefers to be Clark Kent every day, right? And if I understand you correctly, you're saying because his life is more simplistic. Is that maybe the case? Why would you think Clark Kent prefer to be Clark Kent versus Superman?
So you got to know the storyline.
Yeah.
Well, I guess to me, what I'm saying is Superman had a task, right? And that was to save the world, pretty much. That was the greater good, right?
Right.
He had a huge responsibility for the greater good of all humanity.
Right.
Why would Clark Kent not want that responsibility versus his regular
the same reason I would want to be living with my mama right now instead of paying all these bills that I'm paying.
Okay.
When we think about, we think about like, because we have these talks, we talk about our kids. We like, man, I wish I can go back and live with my mom.
But you got more autonomy and freedom.
Yeah, but the pressure, the pressure of having to be of all of what we gotta be every single day for everybody else.
I got the ultimate one. Because hold on. I got the ultimate one now. Because when we tend to even get in this space and this energy, I think it can like quickly become contentious, right? In a comparison. And I'm not saying that's what y'all are doing.
Yeah, I'm not.
But you were just talking about why would Clark Kent not, or why would he not want to? Except who was it that sat in the garden and asked his father to take this cup from me? Like, I don't really want to do this thing.
Right.
But I know that I have to get up there on this cross. But please, like, for my God,
yes,
if you can just,
surely
you can do this.
I guess I'm thinking about how if we want to bridge salvation into this, right? When I think about a man's complexity, and I'm not trying to put more pressure on you all or put more on you than you can bear. But what I would say is, like in 1 Corinthians 13, it said, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. Right. And I'm even thinking about analogies in the Bible where people drank milk, but went from drinking milk to now eating meat.
Right.
There's a transition that come in a man's life where, unfortunately, I understand when you think about your humanitarian side, you kind of like think about how vulnerable you are, how human you are. And to your point, even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said that, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me, right? But he said, nevertheless,
Of
not
course.
my will, but your will be done. And I feel like
Of course.
for real, the way I honor and look at man is that you all do have superpowers.
But that's what we say. I think you still missing what
Right.
we're saying.
What I'm saying is I just want to be clear, because I'm not saying it's incorrect, but some men could think about and be like, yeah, I just want to be emotional and vulnerable all the time.
No,
and like some men can listen to this platform again. It's not the question, but it's how we hear it, right? Some men can possibly say, you know, some men are tired of being strong. Some men don't work because they just tired of being the bread.
But it goes.
But is
back,
that feasible?
It goes back to what we're saying,
Mhm.
which is why it's super important that men have these Clark Kent spaces.
Right.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, we understand
On the Mount space
and
type
this.
situation.
We understand we got to do all this. We got to save the world.
Right.
We got to leap tall buildings in the
So you're not dismissing that with your response.
never.
Okay.
Never that.
Thing. What Clark Kent understood was when to change
Good.
and
That's
when
good.
to take action.
Right. We talk
But
about
he
taking
also
that
this is what I was saying, that I grew up as a little boy watching those movies all the time. That I was in this space after I went to the doctor, and I chilled. Like I stepped away from work. I stepped back. It was the first time I'd ever been to therapy before, because I realized like I wasn't good because of losses I've suffered in my life.
Mhm.
So I'm literally in this space. I'm like realizing that I don't have to do everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting at home. I'm watching Superman. And you know, anybody watched the movie, Superman lived at the Fortress of Solitude, big ice castle.
Mm-hmm.
And it flashes to this scene, and Superman is in this Fortress of Solitude,
Mhm.
and the camera pans to him in the bed, sleep.
Wow.
And I literally looked at it and my head turned, and I was like, yo, even Superman had to go to sleep. And at the time, I was like in this grind, get it, like I'll sleep later, and it wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is I had to see that even Superman, no matter how powerful you are, you have to know when to rest. You have to know when to recover. Clark Kent knew when to be vulnerable with Lois Lane and fall and take down his guard because he had her in the fortress. So you have to know and understand your limitations to be able to appreciate your power and know where you need God in the middle of it.
Let me even give you something else, because Jay, I like this, Jay. Jay says, to be everybody's savior every day and have no time to save yourself is diabolical.
Wow.
Who's saving Superman?
That's true.
Who's saving Superman?
That's good, Jay.
Right?
That's diabolical.
Diabolical.
I like the word.
I bet you did. Yeah, who's saving Superman? And that's what I'm saying. So when he can come back to Clark Kent, Clark Kent.
Who's saving Clark Kent?
Clark Kent had Lois Lane.
Just saying, that's a question. I mean, you want
and who's saving Clark Kent is the same person saving everybody else. Superman.
Okay.
He's right. I was gonna say this.
I'm glad you thought about that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, who's saving Clark Kent?
Yeah.
Superman is.
But that's what.
So Superman, okay. You said, so if he hate being Clark Kent, Superman is the very person that's saving Clark Kent.
Yes. But it's same for us, right? This that inner man rising up. It's that realization, like, even if I don't see what I need to be, I realize I understand it. I live in it. For us as men, we embrace it, that we not feel soft or punk like when it comes to, yo, this is what I need to experience love from the woman that I care about the way that I need.
Yeah, and because and that's part of the reason why we've dealt with this sensitivity about questions, and our responses, because for so long we've been expected to be Superman.
Yeah.
That's all we heard, babe. You do sing that tall building ain't nothing for you, but you ain't never said, hey, babe, I got you. You need a day off today.
Yeah,
you follow what I'm saying? So men, we need Lois Lanes.
Well,
spaces.
I think
not talking about people, spaces.
And as you're talking, I can see it being a collaborative effort, because it's almost like I said, you've given me a safe place to be vulnerable, like extremely vulnerable, right? And I feel like the more I open up those wounds and tell them about it, healing quickly transpires.
That's not healing transpires, and trust.
Well, there's that,
because I
would be remiss if I don't say that I'm nervous.
I mean,
Still
You gotta trust and tremble.
trusting and
and
trembling.
do it the whole way. And what y'all are talking about, right? One of our points is, what does it really mean to know your partner?
Mm-hmm.
And so my thought was, to know is so much more than a sense knowledge, right? It's more than just
Absolutely.
what's his favorite color, or what kind of purse should I buy, or what kind of car would she love to drive. It's even more than, right, how to speak to them, how to handle them, right?
Facts.
Knowing is an intimate connection. As a matter of fact, when the Bible most
You
often
just gonna
talk
go ahead and
about the
steal all
word
my
no.
thunder?
Oh,
Powerful.
I'm gonna just shut up right now. Go ahead.
Knowing denotes a level of intimacy
Silent in the church.
and penetration that's sacred and should be reserved.
My bad.
Yeah.
In the Bible, the term
Play
knew her referred to sexual intercourse, right, between Adam and Eve. But to truly know your partner, and I'm gonna give you the layup again, right? The alley-oop. I need to be ready for it this time. To truly know your partner is to intimately and in a sacred manner be connected or intertwined with them,
Bro,
on a level
took the
and
words
depth
out my mouth.
with which no one else should.
So talk about
Yes, that's good, Rick.
talk about the connection, because when you guys ask questions
Mhm.
and you ask a lot of questions, sometimes, and maybe a lot of times, it's about even connecting.
Correct. And I was going to say that, but I skipped it over because of the time, right? So just going back to what he's talking about. So in order for Bruce to identify how he should engage with me during this process,
Right.
and he also learned that if he support me in this process, he will help with the healing
Absolutely.
quicker,
Yep.
right? So now in him supporting, he's saying, okay, when she asks questions, it's not because she don't trust what I'm saying, because it triggers stuff in him too. We didn't talk about
Absolutely.
that, right?
Yeah.
But
Facts.
when I ask questions, it's not that I don't trust him. I'm really trying to connect with him and understand so we can be in a positive manner.
Yep.
But then when my questions come off, he get defensive, because when I'm asking it, it don't sound like I'm trying to get an understanding, right? And so what I also recognize through learning this, and I just want to say, this is just a reflection question for my listeners, and then I got to go back to something I just said. So for me, when he would ask those questions and they triggered a wound,
Right.
it's almost like I was picking at the same sore.
Yeah.
And so if we think of it from a physical sore, if every time I fail and I intentionally hit the same spot where the sore
That
exists,
thing hurt, boy.
it not only hurt, but it slows up the healing process.
And
Yeah, and I'm just picking the same sore instead of allowing it to heal
Yep.
one moment at a time.
Yep.
I'm just picking the same sore over and over, causing it to be infected, causing it to cause more extensive issues. But I also thought about this. I said, well, I'm thinking about it from a physical perspective. I fall, and I hit the same wound. Yes, it can cause these things, but I'm like, but who wouldn't get an injury when they fall? So then I started thinking more in the champion space. Like if you think about an athlete, right?
Mhm.
When they fall in new places, they keep running and running, right? And if you think about it, I even think of some UFC fights. I be like, why they not hurt? They train their bodies to not hurt from falls.
Well, here's the thing, though, right? It also, on a very literal sense,
Mhm.
it also depends on what you fall on.
That's
Right?
true, but
So-
people learn how to fall
No,
properly.
I'm absolutely
when
with
you
you.
ride
But
when you ride bikes, you better learn how to fall.
yeah.
Yeah, you got to, because it reduces the hurt and the pain from the fall.
Understand what I'm saying? If I play beach volleyball
Mhm.
and I fall,
Mhm.
what that does to me is completely different. If Bruce is a running back for the
Mhm.
Washington Commanders, right, and falls on AstroTurf.
I agree.
So I'm
You coming
saying
over
that-
this year, ain't you?
Absolutely.
Oh, my
I
fault.
rebuke you in the name. Nah, what I'm saying is what you're standing on, the ground that you're operating on is going to have everything to do with what that fall feels like.
Mhm.
And that's what I was tying to the relationship perspective,
Mhm.
right? Because I said you must be willing to experience the fear of falling to enjoy the feeling of being caught.
That's true.
Right.
like
And I
that.
was also going to say, when you
I
say
like
it
that.
depends on the turf, usually, and that's why we're saying have an introspection. So
Yeah.
you can know what field you're playing in. What are you dealing with right now? And how do you
But
need to manage it?
That's my point. What I'm saying is, if you're dealing with a dude emotionally incapable of giving you what you need,
Come on now.
that's like falling on concrete versus Bruce. You're
That's
far
true.
more likely to fall back because you know, even if you miss, it's a soft landing. You have somebody that's understanding,
Yeah.
not gonna belittle you, not put his hands on you, not, you know what I mean, not
Absolutely.
manipulate you. So
yeah, that's additional trauma. But if I got a guy like that, because what I was about to say is understand that Bruce haven't been always who he is.
Absolutely.
When it relates to emotional support, because he was closed out of those areas. It was the vulnerability that I exhibited for him that made him feel like we had a safe and trusted space.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna just y'all got more notes. I'm gonna walk off, and I thank y'all for having me here on y'all as y'all prospect today.
You just gonna
No, I want you to continue with what you got to say, but understand it's 8:15.
Well, we
I'm gonna leave y'all to y'all discussion. So
yeah, I'll just say this. Trauma, the pain of trauma rewires your responses.
It does.
Right. And sometimes we're reacting from, as we've brought up many times here, our past wounds, but not the present moment.
To that end, right? You must be willing to fully be naked and vulnerable. With your person, right? In order to build that deeper emotional trust that you were talking about. You must create, nurture, and when necessary, this is a good one, Bruce. I'm about to rewind. You must create, nurture, and when necessary, repair safe spaces for each other.
Yeah. So I think in those moments, here's a takeaway that you guys can use, right? In those moments, I think it's important when you have a question raised and you don't know the intent of the question, or you feel yourself triggered and now wanting to assume what the intent is. I think it's important that you say, hold up. Let me wait. Right. I don't want to react to the person. Okay. And I certainly don't want to react to my past.
That's good.
Right. So let me take a moment. Let me think about what's going on. And then if you are assuming, just ask what the person meant in that moment.
Just ask, right?
Just ask.
To your point, slow down, ask questions, seek clarity.
Oh, you were right there.
Be mindful, right? Be mindful of where we're doing it, right? Two of our favorite words, same team. Like, we're in this together. The problem isn't me, it's the miscommunication, the misunderstanding. It's the misinterpreted feeling.
The problem is the problem.
The problem is the problem. Same team. Lean in. You know what I mean? Really, truly listen, and listen with the intent for understanding, right? And then just love out loud. We talk about always demonstrating your love for each other. So from a final thoughts perspective, man, just remember, ladies and gentlemen, the problem isn't always the question. It's what the person believes it means. Right. And so our EP wanted us to put a challenge out there, right? Ask your partner one meaningful question this week and listen without assuming. We always hopefully give nuggets. So here's some questions that I came up with for suggestions that you can use with the person that you love. What's something that I do that causes you to feel unsafe?
I like it.
When do you feel the most connected to me?
And write them down.
Absolutely.
And then share with your partner.
Absolutely. What is the most challenging thing about being in a relationship with me?
Yeah,
these take maturity. You know what I'm saying?
This gonna test y'all.
I'm trying to tell you. Do I love you the way you desire to be loved? And if not, how can I do so?
Yeah, what does that look like?
Absolutely. What do you like most about me? What do you like least about me? How can I better support you in your personal goals? What's something you think we can improve on together? Because again, if you're not careful, right, you're gonna, even though the word together isn't there, somebody's gonna take that as a slight or a dig. It's something that I'm not bringing to the relationship. And then again, that question, that weighty question I got from Sir Jakes. Again, this one is a very, very mature question to ask and be willing to listen to. What is the most traumatizing thing that's ever happened to you? And how does it show up in your life?
Ooh, I think we can hit on that, Doc.
That's it. That's all. Listen, please, ladies and gentlemen, like, share, follow. leave a comment, leave your biggest takeaway from the episode, whether you're watching it live tonight or you catch it on the replay. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Victor Vaughn. The gentleman sitting to my left goes by.
It's barely quiet boy.
The executive producer slightly off camera goes by.
Coach Princess Di.
Listen, y'all be good to each other. Lean and love one another because it just makes the world a better place in other space. We will see y'all soon.
Peace. Because all we want is a peace and some peace.
I want to.
He try to get out of it without it.
I got a whole long list outside of that. Later, y'all.
This is a man's world.